Okay, so Twitch 1999 would like people to tell stories from their youth, funny stories, whatever. So I was trying to think about what would I do, what would I tell, and a couple things came to mind. One thing was that I was going to tell when the first time I ever told a dirty joke in front of family, specifically. Do you remember the first time you ever told an off-color joke, or have you ever? Anyway, I did this unintentionally, but I'll tell that in a second. And the second thing is the first time you ever swore in front of a family member where it mattered, where it was embarrassing. Okay, so first story. We had been somewhere, my mom and I and my grandmother, my Grandma Pauline, who was my father's mother. And I don't remember where we'd been, but Mom was driving and Grandma was sitting in the front seat passenger side, and I was in the back. And I must have been maybe first grade, second grade. But anyway, I had heard this story told, or joke told at school. And I remember one of the boys told it and everybody laughed. And I thought, I didn't understand it. But I thought, well, if everybody's laughing at him, then maybe I can tell the story and I can get Mom and Grandma to laugh at me and they'll think I'm funny. So I said to him, asked them if they had heard, if they wanted to hear a joke. And so they both said, yeah. We were sitting parked in front of Grandma's house letting her out. And I remember that because I remember afterwards I got in the front seat and sat, after she got out, I got in the front seat and sat next to Mom. So I said, okay, so here's my joke. I said, do you know why Batman sleeps on his stomach? And they both said no, that they didn't know why. And I said, so Robin couldn't get his worm. And they both started laughing, and then my mom, it dawned on her that, she really shouldn't encourage this. So she stopped laughing and she started yelling at me and she's like, Debbie, I can't remember. She probably said Deborah Leanne, because that's my name. She was, I can't believe you said that. Shame on you, this kind of stuff. And I'm like, so I started crying because, that was not the reaction I was going for. But I remember that my grandma was laughing so hard. She was crying and she couldn't stop laughing. And my mom says, Pauline, you're encouraging her. So, but I was crying and everything. It ended up being all right. And my mom later on told me what it meant, and I was mortified. So I had no idea. I didn't know what it was. Still, it makes me laugh when I think about it. I always remember that joke. And it really was not that funny. But, it was probably funny to a bunch of second or third graders or whoever, was telling the joke. And the second thing is, do you remember when you swore in front of your mom or your family? This was like my whole family. We were visiting down in Texas City, Texas, which is right across the bridge from Galveston, Texas. Galveston's an island, and we were actually visiting friends too in Galveston. Had a beautiful house there. So we had gone, my brother was living and working down there temporarily. He and his wife had just gotten married and they were living down there. And so we were over visiting him, and I didn't like Texas City, Texas very much because it was like just a giant oil refinery. There were so many oil wells and refineries there that the air just felt like it was greasy. It felt like there was so much oil in it. It must have been terrible for the people that lived there. I don't know, maybe it was just a bad couple days when I was there. If you live there and it's not like that, tell me, because this is back, I was probably 7. So our family played a lot of cards. We always played games. We played cards. We played... on Friday nights, our whole family would go down to my grandparents', which was like 20 miles away in a small little town, and we would all go them and see them, and the kids would just play, do things like that, or whatever, watch TV, and the adults would all sit in the kitchen around this big, huge table they had in the kitchen, and the adults would play pitch. So this time we were down there and we were playing knock poker. I remember we were playing knock poker because you'd be going around in a circle playing, your cards, and someone would get a hand they wanted to play and they'd knock on the table, And then everybody knew that they had one more chance going around, and then everybody had to lay their cards down. The person with the best hands won. So whenever somebody knocked, it was always a shock because, you weren't ready, obviously, because you hadn't knocked, so your hand looked like crap. And, maybe you only had 1 or 2 good cards, and there's no way you were going to draw another card that would be good. So anyway, I remember that somebody knocked, and I was really upset because I wasn't ready, and I said, oh shit. Now, I had probably said that a million times before, as a kid, out playing or something, and something happened, and everything, but never in front of my parents or my family. And I remember everybody just like froze, and they all looked at me because, at that time, in that time, it was different. Maybe now somebody wouldn't even think twice about it, but back then, it was just like. Reminded me in the Christmas Story. You remember in the Did you ever see the movie The Christmas Story? One of my favorite Christmas movies. And where Ralphie's helping his dad change the tire, and he said, "Oh fudge," but he didn't really say fudge. And they wanted to know why he had said that, or who had told him that word, where he learned it. And he said in the movie that now he'd heard that out of his dad every single day for as long as he could remember, but he couldn't say that he'd heard it from his dad. That would have got him in more trouble. So he named some hapless kid. And that kid got in trouble. But anyway, so it was kind of one of those things. I'm sure my eyes got really huge. I couldn't believe I actually let that slip. And so instead of sitting there and getting the wrath of everybody, what did I do? I cried, and I ran from there and ran into the room where I was sleeping down there and just laid on the bed and cried because I was so afraid of getting punished, which they never, my parents were really nice. They never punished me. Like I can never remember getting a spanking ever. Never. I was not an abused child like that, but I was one of those kids where they would sit down and they just, my parents would both sit there and they're like, "We're really disappointed in you. I can't believe you've let us down." So it's like, oh my God, just take me out and beat the crap out of me because this is far worse. Anyway, so pretty funny. But do you remember the first dirty joke you told, or the first time you swore in front of your family? Yeah, well, let me know. So that's it, Twish. That's the funniest thing I could come up with. How sad is that? But there you go. Take care. Bye.